We'll start with Mighty Morphin, which I do have the Pink Ranger suit next to me.
I'm just now thinking I should have put a pile of shirts next to me and like put a new overshirt on and change my background every time we move to a new season, but that would have taken a lot of work. So here I am, Mighty Morphin Red. It's gonna stay that way the whole video.
I was like, it was putting pink in the. I was like, you know what? This one's kind of shiny. This one's fun.
Good choice.
I mean, Mighty Morphin. I don't know when you were born.
1992, but I grew up without TV, so I never saw Power Rangers on TV. My introduction to Power Rangers was when it was all streaming on Netflix in 2018.
Which I remember that was something we talked about last time was the fact that I sort of grew up with seeing it on TV and then kind of did the thing where you watched it via the illicit YouTube links. My Morphin started in 93, so it actually started like 3 years before I was born. I mean, I've gone back and like watched bits and pieces. I think the suit design wise, it definitely kind of, I know it came from Sentai, but it definitely kind of set the standard.
I don't know why they look so cool because every time I look at them, I'm like, it's weird. I'm going to use this as an example. The
Yes.
why triangles and why so much empty space? And what do the triangles have to do with their helmet being an animal? I get caught up in like I don't get it. I don't understand why the design is like that. And then I have to let that go and just accept, it looks good.
I think we've seen like this one, there's a lot to some of the later ones that maybe the fact that it is pretty simple, it's like, I think maybe that's probably why it caught on so quickly is the fact that, it's something anyone can draw. And it's one of those things where it's like sometimes the simplest recognizable things become the most famous because they're just like, you see, you're like, oh yeah, that.
I mean, the marketability of the Zoo Ranger suits is off the charts. Like, if it was the Dino Charge suits were the first season, there's a lot going on there. But, like, this hat, even if it just had these white parts on it and not the coin, I feel like some people would still recognize that it was a Mighty Morphin hat. I think that definitely having the simple suits worked in their favor for sure.
I forget the series before it wasn't Sentai. I think it was a lot more complicated. I think because that, and also for some cosplayers' perspective, it's a relatively easy one to create. And you see, like, when people do like the going, having a night out, and people are like, college parties, you'll have the gals, and, it'll be a shirt or like a dress they'll just paint on, and it'll be Power Ranger. I think that helped a lot with the fact it was just like, boom, yeah. It's great they started with the relatively simple design because then it just allowed it to play a role in becoming what it would ultimately become.
It's iconic for sure. The Kardashians wore basically just the correct color bodysuits with the pattern on them, and you can get those from Halloween stores now where it's basically a little skinny jumpsuit that just has diamonds on it, and they still look like Power Rangers outfits even just with that when it's pared down to short sleeves and shorts and just a zipper in the front and the white diamonds.
But exactly, it's just like you see it, you know it. And I think that also allowed it like where when Hasbro made the helmet, the legendary helmet, which I actually was able to get one at one point. It's relatively easy for them to manufacture that. I have the helmet, which admittedly the helmet perhaps is a little small on me. I actually had to remove the interior part of it.
I hate those interior parts. For
Oh
those
yeah,
of you that don't know, the it was the Legacy
yeah, the
collection
legacy.
and then the Lightning collection too. They have it's like a band that goes over your head that's supposed to snug on there and it's attached to the helmet on like a little moving bit so that it'll like hold onto your head and hold the helmet in place around your head. But it's this gnarly little, too tight, hard plastic headband. And you're supposed to be able to adjust them with the Lightning Collection one. I every time I put them on, I'm just like, this is a nightmare. I need to take them out and replace it. Just like put some foam in there so that it fits my head.
Well, that's what I like. I tried it where I was like, okay, my head can fit in this clearly, but so I actually just removed it immediately. And I actually just it's actually like my head actually fits it really well even without. So I actually just had a thin layer like just fabric on the interior. Yeah, no, that thing I have it around just in case I might use it for another cosplay. I don't think I will. But the fact is, it is pretty easy. Like I didn't have a problem. It's all screws, so I was able to unscrew it like within 2 seconds. And it actually does stay. Like the magnets are actually would have been cool to have the actual pieces on the side work, but the magnets do work really well, and you do get that kind of effect of opening up the clamshell. And funny enough, I can wear my glasses underneath,
That's awesome.
which is actually really nice for like going to a convention. I was like, oh, do everyone. I'm like, I might as well. And I put the suit on complete for the first time, and I'm like, oh wow. Like it was just because helmets are pretty expensive, and being able to afford just a helmet was a really cool thing for me, at least.
I have a list of helmets that I want, and it's like a list of tattoos, you know? You're like, "Oh, this'll be $300. I'm just gonna write it down and daydream about it."
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't have the helmet for this suit, but it's like they're like a lot of times like the suit, the helmet will cost like twice as much as the actual suit.
Yeah,
Just
it's
for good reason because it's just a structured item. But like I don't have a 3D printer, so that's not gonna be a thing I can do. I have a friend that potentially has one that I mean people buy the supplies for. Then of course there's a whole process of painting it and everything. I'm trying to finish Wonder Woman cosplay right now, so let's finish that first. Yeah, and then you have the Alien Rangers,
which a
where
lot of people don't like, but I loved it.
I thought they were cool. It's interesting the fact this is, it's one of the more Japanese influenced ones, and it's interesting they made them aliens. I'm like, that was a choice.
Yeah, I don't really understand what the impetus behind that was. I like that they did it because I truly love the, mid 90s head prosthetic that is obviously a hat the actors put on. And it's so bizarre and really flashy and brightly colored and big. And it is very retro alien. I almost feel like it fits in with early Star Trek where they would do like, we'll put dots on their face and make their hair orange. And you're like, yeah, alien. Also, they are clearly ninjas in the suit design and in the fighting method and the way they hold their swords and everything, but they're not ninjas
Yeah.
as the alien rangers, which is very off-putting.
Yeah, well, especially then you have the Ninja Rangers later. It's definitely, you can tell they were like very early on of like, how do we make this work for an American audience?
Yeah. I just really love having the kids actors in there. And I think that all of them do a surprisingly good job for child actors. It's very difficult to find child actors that will do a good job. But also, just the script writing is so loose and free and goofy in that season. There are many scenes where they make fun of the fact that they're not really kids. Like there's a scene where an old woman, I guess she's gonna like call the police because there's two kids alone in the park and it's Kat and Tommy and they're like, what are you doing? Like, we're fine. And then Billy has to pretend that they're his little brother and sister to get her off the trail. And they're insulted. Kat's like, excuse me? A lot of comedic moments with Billy being older and everyone else being young and being older in a kid's body.
Well, and the whole thing with Billy also just as an actor, the fact they had him wear all that loose clothing at the beginning, he was supposed to be kind of nerd, but he's like the accomplished gymnast, and they're like, we need to hide the fact that you are actually super fit.
And then they get on that. They were like, nah, you can tell. Just put him in a tank top, let everyone see his arms.
Yeah, just like, you know what?
They're a
Sorry.
very underdeveloped ranger team, the Alien Rangers. Most
Yeah.
teams, you get to see the different weapons, you get to see the power ups, but because they're not the main characters, their fight scenes are almost filler to a certain extent. And it's just everyone working together and using like cool flips and jumps. And they really don't get into like what their roles are on the team or what they're able to do.
No, and then they get talked about very briefly later on, but yeah, no, they're kind of the one where if you were just a casual viewer, you could miss it, which is really too bad, honestly, because I think there was a lot they could have done with it. And then Zio, which is just like I don't know, I have mixed feelings about Zio.
I was talking to people because I just made a video about how when Tommy goes from green to white is because the Sentai character of the Green Ranger dies and they didn't have as much footage of him, so they were trying to find a new suit design. And that white suit is from Die Ranger, which is a completely different season. And a lot of people brought up that they were sad Saban didn't have the entire team get suit upgrades to the Die Ranger suits because they're really cool. They have that like little medallion on the
Yeah.
chest, like a fun belt buckle with some swirls on it. But Zeo is the season. I think the impetus for Zeo being new suits was how difficult it was and how expensive it was to have to refilm things with the Die Ranger suit and the original Mighty Morphin suits because otherwise they wouldn't be together. So I think that was kind of the thing that made Saban say, okay, well, I can't mix and match anymore because then I have to film my own stuff. So let's just switch to a completely different thing and see if it works.
Because there is a history of them in a couple places where they've skipped suit designs, which is too bad. I remember the problem with the White Ranger was the fact that trying to get the White Ranger suit with the. That's why in so many shots it's just like one on one, or it's just like the White Ranger drum because they're literally trying to use film from a completely different series.
I'm sure it was maddening to try to piece together how an episode was going to work.
Just being like, okay, what clips do we have? How do we make this work? It worked out in the end, but that's probably why we didn't really see that ever again. Zeo, the suits of Zeo have always been a little weird to me because I feel like the part of the top should have been like armor.
They're really weird because they have that incredibly intricate design at the top with all it reminds me of circuit boards, like all the
Yeah.
little in there. And then from here down, it's just like a blank canvas with a belt on it. And I've always felt that they look really naked on the bottom. Just it's such a small little shape and so detailed, and then there's nothing else going on. And I also hate the colored lips. The lips on the helmets are
Oh,
scary when they're like when they stand out because they're silver or white. But with the same color of the helmet, there's some sort of weird baby smooth thing happening there that they feel so much poutier. They're like, and I just, bleh,
well, can
gross.
we also talk about how like the whole shaped visor things? Like Tanya gets like kind of like the line is like right here.
Right here.
And so she's like the entire time she's like looking down or up. Pink gets off really well,
Yeah. Pink gets out of there easy.
But then the red even you're like you have these like blind spots here.
And green, it's like
This,
it is the triangle and
no, no,
blue is
'cause
the
blue's
square,
the
right?
triangle.
Blue's the triangle and green's the square.
Yeah, but
Okay.
again, you have these weird like can't see there.
Yeah, I feel like the square is good, like the oval, but the
Yeah,
triangle, I feel like it could block parts. It's
yeah.
upside down. It's an upside down triangle.
Then the whole Gold Ranger, that whole saga was like, it's these guys, then like bring this back, but no, it's too powerful.
Yeah, you want it to be Billy, but then behind the scenes stuff messed that up. So we're gonna pretend he's got radiation poisoning, and it's one guy, but we have all these red herrings. There was that whole period in which I imagine if you were living in Angel Grove, that like 2 week period leading up to revealing it was Trey of Triforia in the suit would have just been maddening because every episode you're hanging out with somebody and then they just disappear while the Gold Ranger's there, and you see him again later, and you're like, where the hell did you go? Tommy was on the beach with his brother, turned around, and his brother's gone. And I'm just like, was Tommy looking at the ocean and his brother was like hustling to try and get behind a tree? And there's this part with Bulk and Skull where they're lost in the desert together, and then suddenly Skull is just gone. And I'm like, where did he go? They were desperate with the red herrings there. Like, who's it gonna be? And it's just like people just kept insanely disappearing at the weirdest moments in a way where it's like you couldn't have done it on accident. It's not like they fell in a hole or tripped or something. They legitimately had to have tried to run away and hide behind something right when the other person turned around. And I don't like, maybe something was in the water
To
that week.
be fair, I feel like the regular citizens of Angel Grove, they'll probably use that because you had the Ranger teams that would always just like do that. So I feel like if you were a citizen in Angel Grove, you're like, oh, just like random disappearances, sure, why not?
Just talking to someone and then they're gone, and you're like, all right, I gotta go to the grocery store.
It's just like, oh, giant monster fight. All right, just I hope it doesn't hit the grocery. I gotta go there or a laundromat or something.
I hope they don't step on the laundromat. My clothes are on their last dry cycle.
Yeah, the whole Angel is supposed to be like a relatively small town. Of course, then you have these giant buildings that keep getting destroyed.
Warehouse district has huge buildings.
But yeah, just it's like a giant warehouse that they film like Angel Grove has all these like you can see these giant buildings supposed to be a small town. Of course, they're filming in LA, so like they film. Well, I mean, it's just funny being in LA and like going through and like seeing there's a website Ranger Maps that actually has gone through and chronicled where all these locations are.
I gotta write that down. I need to
Oh,
go look.
I'll send you the link. But yeah, no, it's a great website. I really love it. Unfortunately, they didn't film much in Pasadena. Funny enough, the one thing that didn't, but like they'll reuse locations over the years, so you won't realize. But like Lightspeed Rescue filmed the same place they did this, or use Venice Beach at one point, which doesn't. It's like this is a small town and you're using Venice Beach. That's an interesting choice. It is pretty funny seeing you're like,
I feel like they care so little during the Zordon era about like consistency and what's the term where like their purse will be on this shoulder and then it's on that shoulder in the next scene.
oh, I forget. I know what you're talking about, but yeah,
I totally am like a movie nerd. How did I forget this? Yeah, anyway, they don't care. They're just writing plot holes in. They're just doing whatever. Whatever worked, whatever was cheap.
basically, how can we make this work for right now? Congruity, maybe? Anyway, so
Continuity.
continuity, there we go.
Continuity.
It was a C, it was a C word. Of course, then apparently, okay, then we have the fact that the Zeo powers are still around, but the whole
Yeah.
story was that they were too powerful for humans.
Well, that's like an inference based off of something either Zordon or Alpha says about the crystal slowly gaining power over time.
Right,
So then the concept is that it was too powerful for their bodies to handle because that's kind of what happened to Jason with the Zeo power or the gold powers. But
right.
the gold powers aren't even from the Zeo crystal, they're from Triforia. It's like apples to oranges. And then they had written into the movie a reason why, the Turbo movie, a reason
Right.
why they went from Zeo to Turbo. And supposedly, it's really hard to find like the original script and the behind the scenes stuff. Supposedly, when Cat falls in the water while morphing, it like shorts the powers out. But there was this whole scene where they explained that and they cut it completely. So they basically, she messes up that morph and then we just never see anyone in the Zeo suits again. They walk into the base and Zordon says, "Oh, here's the turbo powers. Have a nice day." And the audience says, "What is happening? What
Well,
is
supposed
going
to be the thing where they developed the. There's supposed there's more about they developed the turbo powers and everything, which of course they go from like these Zeo like mythical crystals to cars.
on?" The theory is because Billy is one of the red herrings who was missing all the time when the Gold Ranger came into play.
Right.
And when he finally explained what was going on, he just said, "I was working on something. I'll tell you guys about it in the future." But then because the actor left the show, they never really took that idea to fruition. So the theory is that he was working on the turbo powers.
Which would make sense. Like it's definitely a theory I'd buy into. As for the suits themselves, they're I don't know. They have a lot to them. They're one of the ones that actually does. They look automotive, but the whole yellow square thing, I'm like, it's supposed to be a headlight?
I have no idea what it's supposed to be. I like that they have symbol on the chest, but I don't know what it is. I like the little headlights on the helmets, even though they seem kind of clunky. It really does read like these are cars. Feels consistent, at
One thing
least.
is like I think they feel clean, but that cars kind of look clunky in a way.
Yeah.
So I think it does actually. It's one of the I think helmets to season. It's one of the best.
I would say it's very on theme. And that's got the transfer of power in the middle where they go, well, I mean, with Justin becoming a ranger in the movie, and then again in
Yeah.
the middle of the season with the new team coming in.
Which that was a cool moment. We never really saw a transfer of power like that ever again.
No, I mean that because with the first one, it's very patched together because obviously the original three actors that they're replacing weren't on set at the time, so they had to
Right.
recycle footage. This is so grand, and everyone's in the room at the same time, and you can tell they're in the room at the same time. So it is very unique.
It is one of the moments that, it's like one of those highlight moments because of the fact it's this grandiose
Mhm.
Zordon comes back. They come back for this giant moment, and you have the helmetless actors and actresses, which is always something cool when we get to see.
Yeah, and then you have the question of why is Justin the same size when he's wearing the suit without the helmet, but he's an adult size when he's wearing the suit with the helmet. And I think I theorized at one point that it was like breaking the seal, like there's some energy inside the suit that's changing the shape of his body, but then when you take the helmet off, it's like popping a balloon. It's like it just
Yeah, because
goes
it happens a couple of times throughout the series where he'll have the
it's
helmet off and he's,
so confusing.
I mean, I don't know if it would have been really funny if they took the helmet and it's just like this grown version of him. That
It
would
would be
be
spectacularly disturbing if they had found a way to superimpose his head onto a normal sized actor. So it's a big guy with a little kid's head.
also, of course, his haircut.
That's not his fault.
That's not his fault, but you're like,
My fault.
it's one of the things I'm glad we've left behind. With
Yeah,
all the
it's
respect to the actor, but I think even he would agree. He's like, yeah, that's one thing we can leave behind.
not the most flattering haircut. I mean, I
Uh,
would love to see Justin come back because
yeah.
Blake Foster is this huge dude. He's a mixed martial arts guy. He's got tons of tattoos. He's all beefy. I think that would be so fun to just like integrate sort of where Blake Foster has gone into where Justin went as an adult.
Still had
Yeah.
the turbo powers. So yeah, no, I think brutal. I know Blake Foster's has been advocating for years.
We could do a solo series where Justin's just going around fighting crime like Batman in the blue turbo suit. Just him.
Honestly, like I think a lot of people out there's like, yeah, Justin's probably just like on Earth, like kicking butt. So then we get in space, which makes sense if Justin behind.
I mean, you can't exactly kidnap him. He's
Yeah.
young. They had not graduated at that point. So, regardless of whether or not Justin is 12 and they're all 17, they're all minors because they go back to high school in that show. So, when they leave the planet, did any of them tell their parents?
Supposedly they graduate. There was a whole high school graduation, right? Or am I wrong?
There was in the first episode of Turbo, and it's the Mighty Morphin Zeo crew. And then when they
Oh,
switch over to TJ, Cassie, Ashley, and Carlos, those guys are still in high school. And then they continue to go to high school during In Space. So they're just like 4 17-year-olds were just in a big explosion when Divatox destroyed the base, and they just take off in a rocket that the US government gave to them willingly.
that whole part, like, oh, we have a rocket. Yeah, sure, take it. And it also then the rocket just happens to form critical part of the Megazord.
Well, yeah, and it lands in a useful location? Or did it get tracked or
No,
beamed
because they got taken
astromech?
beamed by the Megaship.
It's been a minute since I watched the first couple episodes of In Space. I need to get into that again.
But every time they have like a last season, it's like, let's go have fun. Let's do something weird.
And
And
then it gets ratings up because taking risks is good for ratings, and then they keep making it because they're making money.
I like the in space suits, honestly.
I do too. It has always confused me terribly. The emblem looks like an envelope. It is an envelope because Mega Ranger is about computers and it's supposed to be a logo for like email.
Well,
That
no,
doesn't make any sense in space, but it just all of them have a freaking envelope on the back of their jacket when they're running around on the ship. And it just, I don't know, it always bugged me. I was like, why is it there?
well, then in Mega Rangers, like the dome on top of the helmet represents some sort of technology, right?
Yeah, they have. So sometimes their helmets will even, I think they show it a couple times in Space, they have something in there because all their helmets are computers in Mega Ranger.
Interesting choice. They do kind of have a spacey look to them, though.
They do. I think they work. I actually, even though it's supposed to be a computer, having the weird big black thing on the top, which changes the shape of the visor, is actually pretty cool. Other than affixing a headlight there or having like dinosaur ears or dinosaur eyes, that's a pretty unique way of doing something to the top of the helmet.
That's true because you're kind of limited what you can actually do up there. Kind of, and also kind of I forgot the turbo also sort of had that as well, and so you kind of kept it. It's sort of weird consistency. Then you get to Lost Galaxy, which you have another mystery ranger. Lost Galaxy was cool. Like so they finally get everyone out of Angel Grove.
I find the transition and the premise of Lost Galaxy to be incredibly funny because they were like, In Space is the last season of Power Rangers, so how do we end it with a bang? Well, let's, do the Z wave and it'll destroy all of the evil in the universe and we'll leave the audience knowing that the characters are going to be okay because there's no more villains in the entire universe. Now we want to make another season. How do we do that? Well, they're going to go to a lost galaxy where there are still evil bug people.
Yeah, I think at some point they're kind of like, okay, Z Wave just missed a few. They
Yeah.
continue to struggle. It just became a thing for the rest of the series. The fact you're like, okay, well,
They pretty much just reset on that in the next season and are like, we're pretending it never happened.
yeah, we're just like, oopsies.
Maybe they were behind a rock. I don't know. It didn't get them.
Well, and you have the interesting where you have the first non-Earth Power Ranger in Maya.
Well, I mean, other than the Alien Rangers, but
That's your like main team.
I mean, and technically Andros, but he is a human.
Oh, that's true. So I guess I'm saying completely wrong. But I just like Maya as a character. I think she adds a lot to the team of like, she's kind of learning along with us.
I love that big of a swing. I love big swings. They were like, all right, the Yellow Ranger is an alien and she is Tarzan. Go. Totally went with it. Her costume design, she's swinging on ropes. Her hair's always all crazy. And it really works. She's a great character. She develops great relationships with other people. She's interesting. She's a powerful ranger. She has good motivation. And I don't think like it could have easily been stupid that she's always in this little like Tarzan dress and swinging around on
Yeah, yeah.
vines. But it worked. It landed.
It worked. I mean, it also credits the actress, of course, for just absolutely rocking that. Mine is just like, all the characters, and you have like Kendrick's, dies. We do get a lot of credit for the fact that the actress legitimately had cancer, which is terrible, but they actually kept her on the main
Credits so that
credit,
they paying her.
keep paying her. Yeah, Valerie Verne. And she did recover, thank God. But the way they did it, because they could have had her just like pass off the power. And I know the story was Cassie was supposed to actually take over, but then there was contract things. But then it kind of works out in the end because then first of all, you have Kendrick's death, which actually feels like it has meaning. But even they bring it back at the end, if that still has meaning too. Like it kind of had made sense. Oh yeah, she was contained within the power. But then you bring a former villainess in Astronema and make her a ranger. That adds. Then you bring in a character who gets this really cool arc in and of herself. Where like, guess what? Now she gets to serve as a ranger.
Yeah, they're both for the record books. That was the first time a Ranger ever died, and it was the first villain to ever become a Power Ranger.
Yeah.
Excluding, of course, evil Rangers, but they come in as Rangers and then become good.
Yeah.
It's totally different. Like main villain to Ranger the next season. It's like and is what everybody wanted. Like you love astronomy in space. And I feel like again it was just something that worked out, but it's really like audience fanfare. Like I wanted to see Corone be a ranger and it's so cool that she gets to do it.
And she gets her own redemption arc in a very big way. And those both of them serve, I think, as two of the strongest Pink Rangers, like character development and everything we've had, which is pretty incredible given each of them only had like about half season. But the
Mhm.
fact that if you were to make a listing of like the strongest Pink Ranger, both of them would be super high up. There's a reason why that episode, the Power Pink, always makes these like top 10 lists because it's one of those ones that you look at it now and you still feel like the emotional impact of, oh my God.
Lost Galaxy did a really good job with character development and emotional impact. Like the history and the story of the Magna Defender is genuinely devastating. Like it was hard to watch at a couple points. I'm just like, oh man,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, just one, even the fact that, Leo, the whole him sneaking on and then reconnect to that old lady at the end is fantastic. His brother not being dead, getting taken over. The military, you have the strong military guy, you have the mechanic, kind of have to learn each other. Character development wise, it's definitely one of the best series because, it's hard to just pick out one standout character in that because like all of them are like they feel like genuine human beings as they would react in a situation like that.
I think they're given enough time too. I remember at least Damon has a really great solo episode where he rescues like the president from the bad guys. And I feel like if I'm remembering him having a solo episode, that other people had to have had them as well, where it's like more about their personality, their character development, and like what they can do.
Right. And I think it really set the tone for having these solo episodes later on in different series. I think they pretty much set the framework of how do you do a really good one. And yeah, so Lost Galaxy, suit design, it's an interesting choice.
I think they're really cool, but they're super bold. Like the really dark line on the chest, it could almost like break up the flow of the suit, but I think it works because it's very striking. I'm honestly a sucker for any team where the helmet is an animal and has little eyes on it. So they're so cute.
To be fair, I didn't realize it was an animal for a long time when I was a kid. But yeah, no, honestly, well, the fact it is, it's very bold. It's one of the more, it's up there with like talking about bold suits. And also the fact that it's incorporated into the morph is pretty cool.
Yeah, the whole thing. Stomp.
And then we get to Lightspeed.
Lightspeed. I feel like the suits in Lightspeed are very unique. There's something about the design starting in the middle and kind of going out and taking up more of the body. A lot of times it'll be a square in the middle of the chest or an emblem like the coin.
Yeah, or collar of some sort.
Yeah, somehow it feels like their imagery is taking up more of the suit, even though it still like starts at the shoulders and just goes down to the belt. But it feels, I don't know, it feels different somehow.
It almost, and they do, they almost feels like a shield in a way.
Yeah, because they go through the shield.
I think it really gives a cool, like, we are the defend, kind of shows that they are defenders of Earth.
And again, like the visor is kind of a shield shape, but I do worry a little bit about like your peripheral vision with that little visor.
The visors are cool. I like the fact they have a lot of scenes where, like, they show, like, them basically wearing a mask underneath.
That's the first season where they had the retractable visors, right? Like you see, that's the first one where you see someone with the visor off and you can
Yeah,
see it.
purposefully. Yeah, because
Uh,
Leo had the scene where, like, the visor broke, and he's like, yeah, no, it's a cool, and the fact they use that as, like, with our first American Ranger, they see the eyes of the Titan, and they're like, wait, that's Ryan. The fact that that gets incorporated is a pretty key plot point. Even if they then do the whole, like, more green candle thing with the just because they couldn't do the suit.
Cobra tattoo. The
Yeah,
green cobra tattoo.
just like, okay, that's one way to do it.
They put that tattoo on his back so they could take the actor's shirt off in every episode. And I will die in this belief until someone from the writing room says, "Oh, that never even occurred to us." And even if they said that, I would not believe them. I'd be like, "Nah,
I was like, okay, which writer actually came up with this? Let's find
we
them.
want to take his shirt off."
Also, dude still looks good today. Just gonna put
Yeah.
that out there. I do remember I had a conversation with the guy who played Captain Mitchell at my first MorphCon, and he was telling us what episodes you can tell his mustache is faking. Apparently, he didn't grow the mustache out till a few episodes in, which is one of the most PMC like conversations I think ever. Has he? We didn't ask him about. He just started talking about this, and we were listening, of course, intently listening. It was fantastic.
At conventions, those guys are just having a blast.
Well, it's the fact that they can tell all these like stories they've always wanted to tell that no one else would really care about. But then you get a bunch of fans who will eat it up.
We're in rapture. We're like, "Yes, mustache."
Yeah, mustache story. But it's also, I think, and that's kind of point about them is like, being able, you get overhear people online talking about how it inspired them, gave them really good role models. I think that's part of the reason why they love it too, is the fact that they were on the show like 20 years ago, and they're hearing these people like, yeah, I went to grad school because of this, or in some way. And I think that's credit to the Power Ranger conventions. Like, they are genuinely really fun. Also hosting the best city in the US, but that's me being biased.
The other thing I really like about Lightspeed Rescue is the villains. That show did an amazing job making the villains really sympathetic, and some of them they're not at the end of the show, you're like, those guys weren't even actually villains. They were just from that society and just going with the flow of what their queen said, just trying to survive. And at the end of the day, I mean, Diabolico helps them defeat the main bad guy and is almost like on their side. The episode where I can't remember the other guy's name, Diabolico's best friend, that is such an amazingly written episode because we go into it kind of getting this feeling of like these guys are really struggling in their social hierarchy and, having issues with their government and maybe starting to feel a little bit sympathetic, but not really. And that episode goes so hard with like, you love these guys, we're about to kill one of them, you are heartbroken. And I was just genuinely impressed with how they took in one episode. They're like, these guys are BFFs, ride or die. They're cute, they're fun, you love them. And I was like, oh no, please, please don't kill one of them.
Well, also the fact that the Rangers themselves, they were like firefighter. They had like real rescue roles. Well, and the fact that they were the first team that was known to be Power Rangers when they were out of suit. Those jackets are, first of all, fantastic.
Yes.
And the Ranger, all the actors actually were gifted their actual jackets at the
That's
end of
awesome.
the end of the wrap party, which I was told by one of the actresses. So, like, when you see them wearing their jackets at convention, those are their actual jackets.
That's super cool.
Fun fact, it's definitely, and I was actually seeing pictures of them. They had wrapped them up like, surprise, we've actually given you your jackets, which is cool. And of course, then we go from rescues to time travel.
Yep.
You gotta give Power Rangers credit. The jumps are
They're just all over the place.
female female leader, which we love. Jen is just absolute power move.
Really traumatized, but very powerful.
Very yeah, seriously. And then you have Wes, who acts like a normal human being.
Mhm.
When which some people give him, I'm like, no. If you had someone come up to us like, oh, by the way, we're from the future and everything. Although in hindsight, with all the weird crap that's happening on Earth, maybe.
Maybe. I'd ask him to prove it,
And then he turns out, and like he could have been this like spoiled rich kid. Ironically, Eric acts more like this spoiled rich kid.
which is so weird. Eric has such a big chip on his shoulder.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I get it. He's pulled himself up by his bootstraps and come from being poor and never getting support from anyone, and that's rough. But Wes is like the nicest guy in the world, and he's just unrelentingly angry at him. He deflects all of his negative feelings of how society has treated him onto Wes, and it's totally not fair. I
It,
do think Jen and Wes and Eric all get a lot of attention, and as a result, Katie, Trip, and Lucas are not very well developed. They give them a few little bits, but I mean, especially Katie and Trip, I want to understand why Katie has modifications to make her super strong and other people from the future don't.
yeah,
And what are those? Are they implants or was it a part of how she was genetically engineered as a baby? Because they make all the babies from scratch in the future.
right.
And Trip is an alien. I wanted to know, do all Zybrians have green hair? And then you see them in the comic book, there's a team of Zybrians and they all have different colored hair. And I would have loved to have gotten even that much information about, his home planet and his people in Time Force, but we really don't.
I will say at least Katie does get the one really cool Wild West episode. Also, the actress is also if you at the conventions they're actually she was saying like, oh, I don't know if I'll go to the diversity panel. I might crash because apparently she just crashes the diversity panel every year, which I think they purposely don't invite her so that she'll crash it. She's like, oh, should I crash it? And all of us are like, yes. She's fantastic. I love her. She's so high energy. She's fantastic. Of course, then you have the thing, right? The Yellow Ranger was male in the It's one of those funny ones where you're like, hey, guess what?
Is that the first time that they made the
No,
male yellow
I
or a
think
woman
I think
this Mighty
Mighty
Morphin?
Morphin might have been male.
Mighty Morphin was, and then did they not do it again until then?
I
The thing is, like, Lost Galaxy don't have skirts on, and yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, honestly.
Yeah, just because I'm actually looking at the like cast picture and you can like tell it's like a male body. Also,
Yeah,
holds
that's
where Eric and Wes are both Red Rangers.
which is so odd.
Of course, then they become like best bros at the end, in the car together, making fun of each other during the Wild Force reunion.
They finally get their drama sorted out.
Yeah.
It only took the apocalypse for Eric to finally open up about his emotions.
Also, I love the fact that time travel is literally like, okay, we're gonna kick you into the past.
Yeah, of all of the ways that you could come up with technology that would shoot a ship into the past, why is it a giant robot with a sledgehammer?
But then they don't even need it when going from the past to the future. Like, does it require less energy?
The ship just wants to go home.
Suits wise, pretty cool. Visor's always a little weird.
I like that they are all the same and yet slightly different. They all have the triangle or arrow shape,
Yeah,
but then some of it's like rounded or it's more of a diamond shape,
right.
but they're all like very, very minutely different, which I think is cool because when you look at them from far away, it looks like they're all wearing the same thing. And then when you get closer, you see like a little more detail.
And then we get to Wild Force, which is definitely one of my favorites. And that's completely, Time Force was a very like serious one. Wild Force was a little more loosey goosey, but
Yeah,
did everything like, yeah, your parents are actually been killed by the main baddie.
right? Yeah, that was really serious, I think, for Power Rangers. That was kind of another bookmark moment from like Kendrick's getting killed in the middle of the season where you're kind of like, whoa, that's big. And then when they're actually just like, yeah, this guy killed his parents and he wasn't even a demon at the time. He just wanted to kill him. Whoa, okay.
Well,
Okay.
and then you're almost left with maybe his parents survived, maybe his parents survived. The tombstone doesn't have any body. Like you're alive, and then kind of come to the realization that no,
They are dead. Very, very, it's shit got real. Also, that's so like the classic scene where the good guy wants to kill the bad guy, and then they have someone on their shoulder being like, then you'll be just like them, which I've never understood because that guy chose to resurrect an evil and become a demon just so he could kill his two best friends because a woman he never told he liked developed a relationship with someone else and he never even talked to either of them about it or told them how he felt. He just decided to murder them, which I guess is kind of how murder usually goes. You're just kind of like, "Yep." But then if Cole killed him, that's a completely different thing. Like
And then he goes
I'm
like, "I'm going to murder them by swallowing the seeds of a demon."
it's crazy. Dude was crazy, unhinged, and somebody needed to take him out. I would have done it. If I was on that team, I don't remember who talked Cole down, but after he walked away and
Probably
was like,
Taylor.
not worth it, I would have been like,
Also, can we point out the fact that Taylor crashes on the island, right?
yeah.
Destroying this military jet, basically. And then is Taylor like AWOL from the military?
I think
But,
they think he's dead.
but then supposedly in the comics, she's like come back, she's like seen as a legend. Because then she goes back. Well, then at the end, she's back in the military.
I think that she could make the argument that, her last transmission was her crashing. She's gone for 4 or 5 years and then goes back. She could be like, I was marooned on an
But
island.
then she's in society consistently, so that throws another thing up. Where did Princess Shayla move thing like she's still on military service in a way, but she's service as a Power Ranger?
Mean, she like goes to look at the military base and is like creeping on him, like, looking around a tree like she doesn't want him to see her. I really think they think she's dead.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the problem when you have only one season. You're like, to be fair, Taylor also gets gypped. Like Taylor really should have been leader. Just
He would have made a way better leader.
and we have Alyssa, who's like very much the mother, but also like is a college student throughout all of this
Yeah, and gets good grades.
and get the
And
friends.
gets up early and makes breakfast for everyone. And rides a bike to school, which she somehow rides off of a floating turtle-shaped island.
Yeah, they
Like,
never really explain that.
yeah, they do not explain how they get off the island. There's one scene where someone is beamed down, but it's I think the god, what's the kid kite who turns out to be
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Animarius or
Yeah, he turns out to be anime, like literally the like main god.
I think it's him there's one part where someone gets beamed and I think it's him doing it. So I have no idea how they get off.
Yeah, there must be some sort of portal, but is it a portal that goes to where they want, or is it like
And when the Zords come down, they basically ride a rainbow. So then that has me wondering, like, do the Rangers just like, if you jump off the side, it'll form a rainbow slide and just take you down to ground level?
except for like Taylor's or of course flies, just like casually flying with it later, like oh hey, let's what's up?
They're buddies.
They're buddies. Which, as a side note, I would love to see a future season where you had Taylor and RJ from Jungle Fury be the mentors because I think that dynamic would be hilarious, but also fantastic because they would very much be playing
Oh,
to each other's strengths, but also bugging each other to no end.
yeah, I'd like to see what happens if Taylor sits in RJ's chair.
Ooh,
What would he do?
I mean, Eric did give her his gun.
Oh boy.
Missed opportunities. Boom, get on it. Then we get to the Disney. We're done with Saban.
Did
Onto
the transfer from Saban to Disney, did it happen during Wild
I think it
Force?
was after the pilot had been filmed of Wild Force.
So yeah, I always wonder because I know Beast Morphers went from Neo Saban to Hasbro, and I'm pretty sure Neo Saban had at least already filmed some of it before it goes over to Hasbro. So that transition is confusing to me.
But it's also then the last series filmed in the LA area because then and New Zealand was apparently cheaper.
Very beautiful. Lots of great places to film fight scenes.
Oh yeah, well Lord of the Rings land pretty much. Love you, New Zealand. We don't just know you for that.